Hey, how's everybody doing today? In this episode, we're going to take a look at mounting a pair of Kirkey Racing seats in the Nova. Let's get through the intro and I'll show you the process. Welcome to the Keefer's Hot Rod Shop YouTube channel. I'm Nick Keefer. That looks good. Hey guys, welcome back. I'm just working on a couple of tubes that are going to be part of the mounting structure for the seats in the Nova. I'm mounting a pair of Kirkeys in there today, and we're going to go over there and take a look at that. But before that, I want to thank you guys for watching and liking the video. And also, if you haven't subscribed yet, I always appreciate that. You guys have been great. Well over 600 subscribers now, and I'm really excited about it. Regardless, let's go over to the Nova and I'll show you how I'm working on mounting the seats in the car. All right, we're back over here at the Nova. Now what I've done is I've actually mocked these seats up just using a little bit of plywood and these wood clamps here. And I've just got them situated in the car basically where they're going to need to be. What I've done is I've actually contacted the owner of the car, and he actually has another Nova. And so I had him measure from his brake pedal pad to the back corner at the kind of bottom of the seat back where it meets the bottom of the seat on his other car, just to get an idea where to mount these seats. So what I'm going to do about mounting this, now that I have that dimension, I've got a place to start, is I've been considering a variety of ways of mounting these seats. You can run little tubes up with cups, drill holes through the seats and bolt the cups on. Kirkey actually also makes brackets that are made out of aluminum, and they're kind of L-shaped, and you can fasten those to the chassis in a variety of ways. But what I've arrived at is I want to cut out and weld in chromoly plates, which will weld to the rocker bars, and that'll hold the outside of the seat, and it'll just come up right next to it, and I'll drill a couple holes or maybe 3 holes and bolt the seat on there. But the issue that arises is how am I going to mount the center? And so that's why I was just working on those 2 tubes that you saw over at the bench, and they kind of make a kind of parallel set of bars on the X here. So this is that X, but if you can kind of notice, I've lined these tubes up so that the center of the tube is kind of on the outside surface of these seats. It's lined up. These seats actually need to move inboard just like a tiny little bit. I need a little extra room, you know, to run the belt and all that stuff. So it's not exactly lined up as it is, but it's close. So what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to send up a plate just like on the rocker bars, and then that's going to come up here, and I'm going to be able to fasten the seat to that. Another issue with running tubes with the little mounting cups up is I only have about 7.25 inches between these seats, and I need room for not only the drive shaft and transmission, but also drive shaft safety loop and all that sort of stuff. So the plates are going to work really nicely. And another good thing about using a plate is just by nature of the plate, it kind of gussets itself. So as opposed to having a couple tubes come up to mount the seat, I won't have to worry about supporting that because that plate is going to hold that nice and strong in the fore-aft direction. And then side to side, the seat's going to fasten to those firmly, and they're going to be welded right down here to the tubes. So everything should be located really nicely, and of course I'll also be fastening the backs of the seats to the chassis. Definitely the driver's side. I think I'll be running a harness bar all the way across. I'm pretty sure the owner actually wants to put a race harness on the passenger side too. So in that instance, I'll be tying the back of the passenger seat in as well. NHRA actually requires 4 bolts on the kind of the bottom of the seat, and then at least 1 bolt on the back. So that'll fasten it in really nicely, and also if needed, it will be adjustable to an extent. You'd have to drill additional holes in the seat if you wanted to tilt that or move it around, but I'm definitely going to, get the owner of the car sitting in here and adjust it before poking all those holes through the brackets and the seats, just to make sure it's where it needs to be to start. Another important thing to consider at this point is actually going to be the seat belts. So the shoulder straps will go up through these holes in the seats, and they'll be wrapped on the harness bar that'll be going across here. And then the fifth and sixth belts will be coming up through the hole in the seat, and they'll be mounted to a tab that's on the floor, welded into the tube chassis itself also. But what I need to address at this point is the lap belts. Now they will come through these kind of triangular pentagonal holes here, and then they need to go back at a certain angle, and I'll be attaching the outers to double shear tabs on the rocker bars themselves, and that'll tie in really nicely. But once again, the concern lies in the center of the car. So on the other side of the seat here, I'm going to do kind of the same thing, but if I come down at the proper angle, it's going to be at or a little behind this part of the X here. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and make a couple of tubes that go all the way back to my number 1 bar right here, and that's going to tie all this stuff together really nicely. It's also going to gusset the number 1 bar for where these triangulators that keep the rear part of the chassis from kind of flopping tie in. It's just going to add a lot of strength in this area, and it's also going to give me a really nice point for that lap belt on the inside of these seats here. So that's the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and cut and notch those tubes, and we'll check that out right now. All right, I'm going to cut a couple pieces of tubing and go ahead and take it over to the notcher and notch one side. I've got it all set up to match those pieces that are already inside the X. So I'm going to go ahead, notch them that same angle, and then after that we'll set up to notch them to meet up with the number 1 bar there. All right, these are looking good on this one side. What you could see me doing was just making sure I've got the notches all cleaned up and fitting onto this piece of tubing that's the same size as that X. It's actually just a piece of that same tubing. So these are looking good, and now what I'm going to need to do is go ahead and measure everything out and notch for the number 1 bar that these are going to mount to on the other end. All right, so we're back over here at the notcher, and I've got one of those tubes that I notched the one end of earlier situated in the notching vise here, and I've got the hole saw lined up with it. I've got a little bit of angle set, just about 1 degree for where it's going to meet that number 1 bar. Now that angle is because the X and the 1 bar are a little out of plane, because that number 1 bar kind of hoops down to clear the drive shaft a little farther than that X. So those angles are a little bit different, and so what I've also done is I've angled this tube just a few degrees in the notcher here too. And the way I did that is I I used a piece of tubing that fits in the notch I already made, and I measured the angle of the notch axis, and I've also measured this angle as well, just this plane that this tube passing through the notch in this tube makes, and that's representing the X that's already in the car. And if this, then this of course represents the number 1 bar. So I'm going to go ahead and oil this up, make the notch, clean it up, and we'll try it out in the car. Alright, we'll go ahead and put some cutting and grinding oil on there. You can see I've got a nice fresh hole saw on there. I like the Milwaukee stuff a lot, but these Lennox hole saws are really round. You can get them at Lowe's, and they're made in USA, and I like them a lot. They really make a nice notch. Alright, got this all notched and polished up. Let's go check it out in the car. Alright, and I notched this one to go here in the driver's side. So let's see how we're fitting so far. Alright, that looks pretty good. So I've got the rear piece lined up with the 2 marks I've made, and then the front notch here I'm going to want to clean up just a little bit, but everything looks like it's in the right place and lined up pretty nicely. Alright, cool. Just adjusted this a little bit, grinded the trough some, and just wanted to get it fitted just a little bit nicer. It's looking pretty good. I might touch it up a little more here, and then we'll look at it in the car again. Alright, back under the car here, and went ahead and mocked the tube up after a little bit more polishing, and it's lining up nicely and looking really good. So I think that's going to do the job. I'm going to give a nice spot for that seat belt to weld down to with that nice tab, and I also went ahead and fit up the passenger side one as well, and that lines up nicely too, and this makes a nice pair. Alright, and here's a view up from up top here, looking down between the seats, and just kind of want to show you how those tubes run. There's a ton of tape on there, but you can kind of get an idea of how those are gonna work. And then I'll have those plates on either side on the inside of those seats, going down to those to mount it, and then little tabs for the seat belts on those rear pieces. So it looks nice, and we'll check this out as I move forward. Alright, so a couple weeks have passed since that last scene, and I was showing you guys kind of that setup of those tubes in the floor X there. Then I'm going to weld those mounting plates and also the seat belt mounting tab too. And what I've been doing is I had to coordinate a time with the owner of the car to come by and go ahead and sit in the seat. You can see we've got a cover on the seat, and you can also see that it's kind of mounted in place with this wooden structure here. What we did is I had him get in and out of the car as we adjusted that seat on this wooden structure until he found just the perfect spot. He's happy with it, and now it's time to go ahead and finish tacking in those tubes, making mounting plates, and going ahead and positioning the seat in its final spot. And we'll go ahead and take a closer look at that right now. Alright, so here's kind of a closer look at that wooden structure. Just basic board, kind of resting against the main hoop on the door bars here. And I spaced it out to the owner of the car's liking, so we could get that seat leaned up and moved forward to where it fit him best. you can see I've got this kind of sliding 2x4 going across the rocker bars here that I spaced up and messed with also, and I've got some pieces of wood just stacked under the front just to keep it from tilting forward as he got in and out of the car. And this piece of cardboard obviously wasn't in for the fitting. I'm just keeping it there to keep dust and stuff off of the seat. When you're mocking anything up, you want as many things in place as possible. So that's why we went ahead and I put the steering column in, and we tried the steering wheel out and all of that. You guys might have seen that in that update video I put up a couple weeks ago. Also, he brought over a shifter. This is an old B&M ratchet shifter. It's not what he wants to use, but we just wanted to kind of eyeball that and get a feel for kind of how he wants to fit in the car and all that. So now we'll go over to the other side, and I've actually started to make a template for one of those brackets, so we'll check that out next. All right, here's a look in the passenger side of the car. You might be able to see in a little more detail just kind of this wooden structure I used to prop the driver's seat up just in the exact position that the owner of the car wanted, and we're able to get it just perfect. I built in plenty of room to move the seat fore or aft, lean it however it needed to go. And so another benefit to that is there's plenty of room later if he wants to change the pedal setup or anything like that. The seat can be moved back or even forward, or whatever needs to happen. But what I wanted to show you guys is this chipboard template that I've been making for the actual mounting bracket for the seat that I'm going to be making later out of metal. So you can kind of see how it lands down on the tubes I was showing you guys earlier in the video. And I also spoke earlier about how the lap belt will secure down to a tab that's also attached to these tubes. As you can see where the seat ended up needing to go, that tab's not going to need to be a lot further forward than the actual X itself, kind of looking down from the seat. But I want to go ahead and keep these pieces, go ahead and weld those in, because I like how they reinforce this number 1 bar and kind of reinforce that span where the rear back half triangulator bars attached to that rear cross member there. And I like how it ties everything in together. So as far as this goes, you can kind of see how I've shaped it to come up, and I'm going to have a couple bolts that are going to attach the seat to the chassis. I also, if you look on this gear vendor's unit I've got sitting in here, you can see where the speedometer output is, and I wanted to clear that, and also there's really no reason to have an overhang over the chassis where there is no tubing. So that's kind of why that's shaped like that. But I also want to have a really nice footprint on the tube that's going to attach to. So you can see I angled this back to meet a little bit more of that tube. So this should work pretty nicely. One thing that I need to avoid is putting any kind of bolt head, or especially the bolt thread and nut portion in this area where the lap belt is going to run across, because that could chafe that belt, and I want to avoid that. So that's why this kind of starts up here instead of in that back corner. But that just kind of gives you an idea of that. Next, it's going to be time to go ahead and make the template for the outer portion, and I'm planning to make them the same for both seats. I'll have inside plates and outside plates that are just the same, and the seats are going to mount the same way. So that's what we're going to do next, and let's go ahead and check that out. All right, so we're back over here by the driver's seat on the driver's side, and I'm going to go ahead and measure for the plate bracket that's going to weld to the rocker bar here, and then come up and bolt to this seat. So it's going to weld down to the rocker bar, as I just said. That's down next to the rocker here. And what I'm going to want to go ahead and do, since I already know kind of the shape that the top of that bracket needs to be, which I've already established with that inner bracket that we were looking at earlier, really all I need to do is measure the height about a 1/4 inch below this seat belt gasket here, just to know how high that bracket needs to travel. So I'm going to go ahead and poke a measuring tape down through here. I'm going to go to the floor and move it back into position, and I'm looking at about 26 3/8 of an inch, give or take. And so if I consider that I know how high above my build datum that plate needs to start, because I know how it needs to kind of interact with the rocker bar of the car. My datum is 20 inches off of the ground. If I go ahead, take that 20 out of 26 3/8, I've got 6 3/8, and I know that I need to knock another 1/4 inch off for that clearance, so I've got 6 1/8, and I know that I need to take an additional 1.5 inches off of the bottom of that, so that it sits correctly on the rocker bar here. So that leaves me with 4 5/8 of an inch. So that's what the height of the rear part of that bracket's going to need to be, and then the front will just be shaped like the inside piece, which travels up at this same angle as this gasket, and just goes to the front of the seat. So I'm going to go ahead and cut out a template for that, and then we'll check that out here in just a second. Alright, I just quickly want to kind of show you all the layout of these plates. I've got my distance between the rocker tubes, and I've got kind of where I want my plates to lay out. These are the little tubes welded into the X and all of that, that those inner plates are going to sit on. So this, if you remember from looking at the inside of the seat in the car, and then to make all this work, I need these outer brackets to sit kind of on the edge there, and so I've just kind of calculated that out. You know, I've drawn the tube, and then figured out what the distance from that center line needs to be and where the edge of the tube is sitting, and it just happens to be just a touch over a 1/2 inch above the middle of that tube. So that's just kind of what I was talking about with kind of sitting this up on the tube. Kind of show you on this piece here. So it's not exactly going to sit on top of the tube, and it's not just going to be next to it, it's going to be kind of up on it a bit, and that's a 1/2 inch off of the center line through the tube, just to kind of give you an idea of how that sits. And that's just really specific to this car. If the car was wider, or the seats were narrower or mounted differently, I might instead use tubes that travel transversely across the car, kind of going left to right, and then I could put little tabs up holding the seat on, or there's just a multitude of ways to mount seats. But you always want it to be nice and secure and directly to the chassis when you can. And you know, sometimes stock seat mounting locations are usable, but you know, when you can tie it into the chassis, especially the belts, it's always a good idea to secure the driver. So this is just kind of that layout. I wanted to explain what I'm doing, and now it's going to be time to make these plates and fit them up in the car. Alright, so I've got my piece of chipboard here, and this is actually that plate template off of the inside of the seat there. And as I mentioned before, I've already kind of cut the top profile, as I'm going to need both of them to be. And then that happens to fit right up with where I already cut this piece out of the piece I'm cutting this next piece from. So what I'm going to want to do is go ahead, and what that measurement was for, that 4 5/8 inches, was actually for this height here. So I'm going to want to go ahead and mark that. And once I make that mark, I'm going to want to go ahead and take a square, just square off the bottom of that bracket, just to make sure that it fits level across that rocker bar. And for right now, I'm going to go ahead and just mark this with pencil. And then the length of that bracket is 8 inches, so I'm going to go ahead and make sure that lines up with my piece. And then for this one, I'm going to go ahead and just cut it. And then while I've got this square on here, I can go ahead and cut this too. Alright, so here's our template for right now. Let's go try it out on the car. Alright, so we're back over here at the car with the template I made, and I'm just going to kind of put it down into place, and that looks like it's going to be really nice. So if you can kind of see how that matches the angle of this gasket here, it also clears it by about 1/4 of an inch, just like the inside. What I'm going to do is I'm actually going to go ahead and measure from this corner to where this crosses the bottom of the seat on both sides, just to verify that everything fits properly and symmetrically, just so the seat's mounted nicely and just not kind of haphazardly. But this is looking really nice. You can also kind of see how it fits on the rocker bar there, so not on top of it and not next to it, but just kind of offset on the side of that tubing, kind of as I showed you on the on that piece of paper that I drew everything out on earlier. So that's looking good. All right, and before we make those brackets, I just wanted to get everything mocked in here, including both seats with the covers on them, and I thought I'd give you guys a look, just kind of a preview of how this thing's going to look. I've got a Hurst pistol grip quarter stick in here. The owner wanted to use a shifter kind of more like this, and we can kind of look at it from the front too, making sure those bracket designs are going to work with the seats arranged like this. I think I'm going to actually end up moving the seats together, or actually where they are right now is about an 1/8 inch inboard of where I had planned to put them before. But again, I want room for the cover and for the belt to pass down inside of this door bar here to fasten down to the little tabs that'll be in this area. So just a final little check to make sure everything's going to fit, and then next we'll be making those plates. All right, so back over here at the workbench, and I've got this piece of 125 thousandths or 1/8 inch chromoly steel plate set up here. This is the same material I used on the rockers to mount the floor structure of the chassis to, and it's the same material you'd use in any unibody to mount a roll cage or any kind of chassis to. This is what they call for NHRA or SFI, any of that. So I'm also going to use this to make the bracket plates to mount the seats in the car. After I mocked everything up, as I showed you just a little while ago, I actually determined that with the covers on the seats and with the seats in the position that the owner liked and all of that, I actually needed to move them each inboard 1/8 of an inch. So they're 1/4 of an inch closer to each other as compared to my plan before. So what that did is it actually moved these outer mounting plates inwards towards each other inboard of the car. So it's actually going to sit a little lower on that rocker bar, and it just needs to be a little bit longer. So if you recall the math that I did and showed you guys earlier, with how that plate sits on that rocker bar, I had to recalculate that, and I'm just going to need to add a little bit of length to these mounting plates. But that's why you want to mock stuff up, make sure everything's right and good to go, and try to eliminate mistakes later. All right, so I ended up making one more revision. Before we cut all those plates out, I want to show you I made a new template to reflect the plate I intend to make. This looks a lot like the previous one, but it's actually different. I went ahead and I moved the top edge down a 1/4 inch so that I've got more like a 1/2 inch of clearance to this gasket. And I also angled this part back further so that it had a better footprint on that tube that's going to be welded in with the X down there. And what I wanted to do is just give a little clearance in case the seat ever needed to be lowered. This way it can be dropped down a little bit and re-drilled, and won't hit the seat belt hole in the seat here. And I just wanted a little bit more footprint, so went ahead and redesigned that a little bit. But now it's time to go ahead and mark everything out on the plate, and we'll check that out next. All right, so I used that template and I went ahead and marked the first piece. I'm going to go ahead and cut it out. And what I want to do is I want to go ahead and just cut one piece at a time, mark the next and cut it, just so I don't accidentally shorten anything too much or anything like that while I'm cutting it. So I'm going to go ahead, cut this piece out, and then I'll make its partner. So I'll have a pair, one inside, one outside, and we'll go check them out in the car. And if those are good, I'll cut the rest out and drill holes and everything after that. So let's get cutting. New blade. Now that I've got those cut out and I've got the edges polished up a little bit, I'd still plan to not only drill the mounting holes to those plates, but I also want to round the corners and stuff like that. But I just wanted to give them a nice quick cleanup to fit them in the car. But let's check out these outer plates, or this outer plate. It's looking pretty good. I'm actually going to need to clearance part of the floor just a little bit to get it all the way down to where it needs to fit, but I'm going to pull the floor out to weld these in anyway, and then I'll fit the floor back in the car later. It's just sitting in there. But you can see I've got it taped in place, and it needs to go down a little bit, but it looks you know, pretty much like how the cardboard one looked. Good to go, and I think that's going to work out pretty nicely. All right, and here's the inside one. Once again, it's actually sitting on the floor where I cut it away for the transmission tunnel previously. I just need to trim it a little bit more. You can kind of see it under the passenger seat here, but as you can see, the shape works out. If this was able to sit flat without that stuff in the way, it'd line up better with that tube down there, but you can kind of see how It's going to fit in there. I've got that clearance to the gasket here. Those are looking good. So now I'm going to go ahead and make the other plates and then clean all these up around the corners and drill the mounting holes in them. All right, so I've gone ahead and marked the plate for me to cut out the second inside seat bracket plate. And what I've done here is I was planning to kind of mirror the last cutout like this, but I figured I'd hate to cut into this part of the plate and potentially waste part of that if I could just put this hump over here closer to the original one and then just cut this out of here. So that's how I've started it. I'm going to go ahead, cut this one out, and then cut that next one out. So going to reposition this on the table and go ahead and cut that out. Alright, so before I go ahead and drill the seat mounting holes in these plates, I'm going to just clamp each pair together and give them some final shaping and make them just exactly the same, just so that they're perfect pairs. And then we'll go check out putting some holes in these things. Alright, cool. So I got these all evened out. Maybe you can kind of see on camera there. I also went ahead and rounded the corners off a little bit. I'll probably touch them up a little more just to get that radius to kind of match where the bolt holes are going to be. But that's going to be the next step. Get ready to poke holes in these things, and then we're going to set the car up to receive them. Alright, and I took it one step further. I clamped them all together, staggering the height as they're staggered in the car. So these mount onto the rocker bars, and then these mount onto those little pieces that are welded to the pieces of the X. And so they're spaced accordingly. and I went ahead and I ground everything flat and rounded the corner the same in front, so that everything's just the same. Not that you'll really see it in the car or anything, but I just like it, and it's going to help line everything up when it's time to go ahead and drill through everything. So just wanted to show y'all just kind of one last step I took. And when I do brackets that all need to be the same, I like to do it like this. You just want to make sure you clamp them really tightly, because if one starts to migrate, you're just going to make one smaller than the others, or especially if you stack like 4, it can really turn bad quick. So just got to make sure it's clamped tightly and keep checking on them. But got these all lined up and they're looking good. So now it's time to go ahead and poke some bolt holes in them. All right, so before I go over to the drill press and start these holes, I want to go ahead and take this center punch drift and make a couple dimples where the holes need to go. So I've already marked those. They're about a 1/2 inch from the edge. They're going to be 3/8 mounting hole, and I've got them all marked out here. I'm going to go ahead and center this up and make the dimple. Then we'll go over to the drill press and start drilling the holes. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and start with a small pilot hole, and for that I'm going to use a 1/8 inch drill bit. So I'm going to situate that here in the chuck. The spindle speed on this, I think, is set pretty decently for what I'm about to do here. Looking on the chart, I think I'm at 500 RPM. So that should be good all the way through the sizes. All right, so I'm going to start with this 1/8 inch bit, and I'm going to go ahead and try to drill through all of these at once. I've got this spaced up here just so these clamps clear the table. It's a little risky doing this. You have to be really careful because these can move around. One reason I'm wanting to start with a smaller pilot bit, it pushes metal around a little bit less than going right for like a 1/4 or even the 3/8 final size. So I'm just going to go ahead. I got to oil this up, but I'm going to put this pilot hole in here, and then I think I'm going to stick something through that hole. That's one thing you want to do when you're drilling multiple holes. Just go ahead and put a bolt or something between or into that hole before you move on to the next, just to keep those pieces indexed. But let's go ahead and start on this first hole. Hopefully that went through nice and straight. It's looking pretty good. We'll move on to the next one. All right, so I went ahead and rearranged the clamp, and I put this, it's actually broken, but it's an 1/8 inch drill bit with some tape wrapped around the top. Put that through that previous hole to make sure all the plates stay indexed. Now we're going to go ahead, oil this guy up, and drill our next pilot hole. Alright, cool. Looking good. On to our next drill size. Well, after I drilled the pilot hole there, it occurred to me that this car, being a 25.3, requires all holes and tabs to be 1.5 diameters of the hole away from the edge of the tab, meaning that if it's a 3/8 hole, it's got to have 3/8 to the edge. And the way I drilled these, they would only leave about 5/16 because I moved them in a 1/2 inch from the edge. So I have staked new pilot dimples here, and I'm going to try to get this plate right and then template them down through the rest of the tube with that final size. All right, so I went ahead and I changed the location of the pilot holes a bit in this top plate. Got everything clamped together super hard, and I actually oversized those pilots 1/4 inch, so now I'm going to stick a 1/4 inch bit in there, run it through. Then once I get that first 1/4 inch pilot hole drilled, I'll go ahead and bolt all the plates together, get the second one so that I know they're all indexed, and then go back and forth to the 3/8. Let's go ahead and drill it to 1/4 inch. All right, cool. Time to bolt it up. Perfect. All right, let me go tighten that down. All right, sweet. Got that all tightened up. Go ahead and get some oil on that bit. And get this situated for the second hole. All right, fantastic. All right, from 1/4 inch, I want to go ahead to 5/16 next. Not much of a step, but make sure to keep this thing nice and centered. All right, 5/16 all the way through. All right, 3/8. Nice. Cool. I'm going to bolt that up with a 3/8 bolt and then work on oversizing the other hole. All right, I've got the 5/16 bit back in. I'll go ahead and start out this hole. All right, now on to the 3/8. All right, cool. All the way through, 3/8. Sweet. All right, so I've got this stack of drilled plates over here at the workbench, and all that's left to do is go ahead, take the bolt out, take the clamps off, and deburr all these bolt holes. Had the clamps on real tight. All right, here they are. Time to deburr them. All right, and that just keeps that edge nice and clean and kind of relieves some of the potential stress. And also sometimes, you know, the very top of the bolt has a little bit of a fillet in there, and that helps that. On this one, however, I think I'm going to be running the bolts from the inside through these plates, and then the nut will go here, but regardless, nice and clean. And so these are ready to start fitting up in the car. All right, back over here at the Nova, and I've got a couple of plates set up next to the seat one more time. And what I'm doing is just kind of doing some final visualization before I pull everything apart to start welding these to the chassis. I'm just making some final measurements from some of these bars in the back. I made a little mark there. These can actually settle in a little bit of a range here just kind of according to how the middle center inside plates are gonna need to sit on that tube there, and also just where exactly I want to position them. Keep in mind, I have to make sure that this 3-inch belt coming through here is not gonna rest on any kind of sharp fastener or anything like that. And I also just want to make sure I'm securing the seat in a good spot, and also considering it will be mounted up in this area as well. So some of the lean back weight forces there will be kind of taken up by that mount. But kind of making my final survey of this thing, and then I'm gonna go ahead and pull the firewall and floor and seats and all that stuff out of here, and we'll take a look at that in a sec. Alright, so I've got everything pulled out, and I went ahead and I mocked the driver's seat back up, and if you can see from here, I've got the plate in there. I'm just kind of eyeballing everything one more time and setting everything up. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to start by welding those outer plates in on the outside of either seat. I'm going to make sure they're in the right place and parallel, and then I will measure and set up to weld those inner plates like that one in once those are in, just so I know they're going to hold the seat correctly and everything like that. But one more thing I'm going to have to do real quick before I put those outer plates in is I'm actually going to have to set up a bar that runs kind of across the car. It'll be multi-piece, and it won't actually go where the transmission goes. It's called the number 9 seat support, but it will go across under the seat. I'm going to go ahead, you only need it on the driver's side, but I want to go ahead and put it on the passenger side too, since both sides of the car will be equipped with racing harnesses, and it'll just kind of help strengthen everything. It actually coincides with where those outer brackets are going to sit on the rockers. So I want to go ahead, get those bars in place, and I'm going to have to notch those plates a little bit, and they'll be tied into that number 9 seat support as well, which will be really nice. So we'll check that out and get to fitting that up, and then it'll be time to put the plates in. All right, and over here on the driver's side, you can see where the outer plate is going to need to go. It goes about where that line is on the rocker bar there. And of course, we're just looking at how all that fits, but that plate ends here, and right about here I'm going to need to run that number 9 seat support bar across, which that plate will tie into. So it'll be attached to that, and then that bar is going to go across, and it's actually going to attach to the X. So it's going to look like this on the passenger side, and it's going to kind of tie all this together and make that all nice and strong for the seat. But the other thing is I'm going to make it so that it goes right across under this 5th belt strap hole here, or 5th and 6th. We might be running a 6-point harness in this car. But I'm going to put that right in the right place so that I can attach the tab for that anti-submarine belt down there at the proper angle. And so that's going to be next. It's going to be multi-part, so there'll be a piece here, here, and then I'm going to go ahead and connect it to the X as well. For right now, I'll probably just go ahead and do the outer piece, and then I'll do the rest later, just because the outer plates to mount the seat on are going to need to be notched just to sit on where that tube welds to the rocker bar. So we'll get that in here, and check out setting that outer plate up next. All right, so I've decided on a position for that number 9 seat support crossbar, and I've measured from this cross member, from the back surface of it, and took the seat out of the way. So I measured with the seat in place just to make sure it's lined up with that hole in the seat there, and then I've gone ahead and marked that measurement out here just with a Sharpie, and measured how long this tube needs to be. I'm going to get that angle and go ahead and make a piece that goes here. So that'll be nice, it'll all tie in together, and about to get started notching that tube. Alright, so as you just saw, I made and fit up those little pieces of the number 9 seat support bar, and they're looking good in there. Again, that's just that's part of the floor structure of the 25 spec SFI cages, and it's 1.25 inches, just like the diagonal here and the X and all that sort of stuff, and they want it to all be 1.25 inches or at least 058 wall or bigger for all the seat stuff. The rules are kind of vague as far as seat mounting, but those plates on the outside are going to rest on this tube, and in this particular case it will also weld to the rocker bar here, and then this will continue to the X, and as you guys know, these will support those inner plates. So I needed to get this in first. Now that they're all shaped up, I'm going to finish cleaning everything up. Alright, cool. So I've got these tubes all cleaned up inside and out, and got the gas expansion holes drilled and everything. So now it's just time to go ahead and tack them in. And what I'll be doing is I'll be welding the rocker bar side of them all the way around the top, just so that I can put those seat mounting plates on there and not worry about having an unfinished weld under where they sit. So let's go ahead and weld them up. Alright, so I'm back over here at the bench, and the next thing I'm going to need to do now that I have those number 9 bars welded in the car is I'm going to have to go ahead and notch these outer seat mounting plates to fit onto those bars. And if you can see right here, I've marked this plate out to do just that. I'm going to go ahead and just use a drum sander on the die grinder and make that notch in both plates. And I'll also add a radius to clear the actual weld of the bar, the number 9 bar, onto the rocker bar, just so it sits down on there, and we'll go check it out in the car after that. Alright, so looking for a 3/16 of an inch depth to that notch, and it looks like I'm just about there. So I'm going to go ahead and switch from this coarse drum to a fine one. Just touch it up a little bit, and I'm also going to put a kind of a bevel on here to clear the actual weld fillet itself that attaches that tube to the rocker. Alright, cool. So that's looking pretty good. Let's go see how it fits on the car. Alright. Alright, so it's pretty much in place here. but it looks like I need to clearance it just a little bit more for that weld fillet. So I'll go back to the bench and do that, and see if it matches up with the measurement height-wise that I need this to fit at. Alright, so this drops down onto the tube nicely, and looks like it's fitting pretty well. I just want to go ahead and secure it in place and measure to make sure it's where it needs to be, and then we'll clean everything up and need to do the other side and work on tacking these in. Alright, now I need to go ahead and make this notch in the other plate here, and I'll do it just the same way. Alright, so over here at the Nova, I actually have the driver's side outer seat mounting plate situated, just using some tape, and I've got it pretty close to level and all that, but just sitting in here, and you can kind of see how it sits on that number 9 seat support tube there, and how it also attaches to the rocker bar there, and it's going to run vertically, and so I'll have a little space between the seat and this secondary door diagonal here for the belt and upholstery and stuff like that, but it just needs to be all the way out because there's not much room between the seats. But you can see how well it fits, and I'm about to clean everything up and go ahead and weld those on. I've also got the other side set up. It's all notched and mostly cleaned up, ready to go on there. I just went ahead and sanded all that stuff. That's why that weld looks kind of weird, multicolor and shiny, but just sanded it nice and fresh for the weld. So I'm going to clean this side up too and go ahead and we'll start tacking them in. Alright, so I've got this plate taped in here. Obviously the angle isn't set perfectly with this tape, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and tack this plate to the number 9 seat support bar here, and just with one little tack, and then what I'll do is I'll be able to fine-tune that angle. After I tack the other side on, I can also measure between them, make sure that everything's dimensional and parallel. So I'm going to go ahead and lay that tack down. I do have it positioned so that it's level in this manner and at the height it needs to be. That's one convenient thing about it resting on that number 9 tube there. It does hold it at the right height. So I'm going to go ahead and put that tack on, then we'll check out the other side, and I'll start measuring between everything, making sure it's parallel and good to go, and then burn them in a little bit more, and we'll start on those inner plates. Alright, now that I've completed that tack, I'm going to go ahead and put one at the very back just to establish the level in this manner. I'll still be able to fine-tune this kind of tilt, but I just want to go ahead and tack the back of that just to get it in place. And I'll also be able to roughly verify this off of the floor. Not that concrete floors are perfectly flat, but actually this area where the car is sitting is really surprisingly flat, and measures out really nicely. And that's right where I'm looking for. 21 7/16 off the ground, or 1 7/16 off my 20-inch build datum, and that's looking nice. So I'm going to go ahead and get ready to tack that other side in. All right, over here on the other side, same plan. If I had a third hand to hold that filler rod, that would be nice, but I'm happy with 2. I just need to make sure that rear part's ready and we'll tack that next. It's good. Alright, so these are measuring out nicely to the distance I need between these outer plates, which would just be the width of both seats added, and then the distance between the two seats, obviously just all added together. Just kind of triple checking everything at this point. And it's looking right on, so I'm going to go ahead and just add some tacks up here, and then we'll get moving forward on more stuff. Perfect. Go check out the other side next. Cool. It's looking great. Awesome. All right, so one thing I'm doing on the seat here before I actually set those plates up in the car is some of these welds, I believe this is maybe where they tacked everything together before they welded the seats together. They ride a lot higher than the rest of these welds. And if you look right here, the weld's actually on the bottom of the seat. This panel butts up inside of this, so the weld's actually more so on the bottom of the seat. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and file these high welds on the corners, just kind of level. The rest of them aren't too bad, but these just make enough of a difference that the mounting plates don't want to sit flat against the side of the seat here. So like I said, I'm going to file these down, and then we'll get setting them up in the car. All right, and here it is after a little filing. I actually wrote onto these welds just a tiny little bit. I don't want to weld these down just kind of to go over. That would take a lot of strength out of this joint, but also it's welded really nicely on the inside here too, so it's looking good. And I just got them flat kind of with the rest of the welds, so that's as far as I want to take these. I'm going to go ahead and do the rest, and then we'll get fitting these in the car. All right, so I'm doing one more mock-up now that I've got the outer plates tacked in, and I'm just kind of having a look at these inner plates and how they sit on these tubes. And it's pretty nice having the outer ones in at this point. We've got these clamps holding the seats onto those, and they're sitting on that same kind of wooden structure that I had them on before, had the seats on before, that is. But just kind of a cool look at what's to come. And I'm getting ready to go ahead and weld those tubes in between the pieces of the X coming up next, so that I can mount the plates to them. And I'm just making sure I like where the center line of those tubes kind of lies, and how they relate to the plates. So it's looking pretty good. I might do a little bit of tweaking, but everything fits really nicely since I filed those little high welds off of the seats, and it's looking good going forward. All right, so before I go ahead and start welding those inner seat mount plates in, I need to add some more tacks to the X just to make sure things don't start moving around. So I'm going to add some kind of to the bottom, and I might also put some more weld in this area just before I put these tubes in here and kind of crowd everything. So that's going to be the next step. I have to finish cleaning these up too and drilling little gas holes in the X so that I can weld those two on. But once that's all ready, then it'll be time to set up for those inner plates for the final installation and tacking them in. So let's go ahead and get started with all that. Alright, so now I've got that X welded in and the center welded up where the tubes are going to kind of block those welds a little bit. I also went ahead and cleaned up those tubes so they're looking nice and shiny inside and out. And I also trimmed these a little bit. I moved them inboard just so that those inner brackets kind of set more centered on these tubes instead of offset a little bit. Just kind of fine tune them. So now I'm going to work on getting them ready to put in there. I'm going to clean up where they sit, and I'll also drill the gas expansion hole so I can complete the welds all around these tubes when I weld up the chassis entirely. So let's go ahead and get on that and get these in there and work on those inner brackets after that. I'm going to go ahead and trace around these just to know where I need to drill the gas holes, and also where I need to polish the tube that they kind of weld onto here. This will just kind of give me both pieces of telemetry. All right, cool. So everything's all cleaned up, ready to go. So let's go ahead and tack those tubes in. All right, sweet. So now that I've got these tubes welded into the X here, since the inner plates will be sitting kind of over the front seam of these welds here on either of these tubes, I'm gonna go ahead, I might add a couple more tacks to the back, and I'm just gonna go ahead and run a bead over the top here, just so that I don't have any unwelded spots under these plates. Alright, so now that I've got those tubes tacked in and welded in the front, I went ahead and mocked the driver's seat back up in the car, and I'm just setting up to go ahead and weld the inner plate in. I'm going to go ahead and just use the seat to position that plate and tack it in, and then I'll put the passenger seat in, kind of repeat the process. I've got them sitting on top of the car all cleaned up and ready to go, so let's go ahead and start tacking those in. Alright, so if you can see the plate, I've got it set up right here, and what I'm doing is I'm just working on getting it vertical and especially parallel to the outer plate that's already holding the seat in. So I've got the seat clamped to that, and then this plate is taped to the side of the seat here, and sitting down on that tube I just welded in that it's going to be welded to. So what I'm working on doing is using this measuring tape to go ahead and make sure the distance between these plates is consistent from the top to the bottom of the plate, and that way I'll know that they're parallel. And I already measured the outer plates on either side to make sure that those are parallel. So these will all be set up nice and parallel, and that way I can fasten the seat to them. The side of the seat is not perfectly flat, I guess you'd say, just because this weld at the bottom adds a little material, obviously, but also I think the side is concave just a little bit. So it's aluminum. When I bolt it all together, it'll draw nice and square and secure. But regardless, I'm just working on measuring this top to bottom, and it's about 20 and 5/16 of an inch between these plates at the top, and that's what I want on the bottom as well. So I'm going to go ahead, get it in position, and then I'll go ahead and tack that plate in, measure some more, and continue to tack it in place. So one more thing I want to show is just kind of how I'm setting these up. So in a fore-aft manner. So I'm measuring from that number 15 bar right there that runs all the way across the main hoop, and I'm measuring down to the actual mounting hole. And so I'm ensuring that they're all the same distance from that 15 bar, and so that way all the holes will line up across the car. And so I'm comparing that to the inner plate as well, making sure that I've got the same value. And also, you know, I know the dimensions of these plates and where they should be also in comparison to the rear main cross member number 1 bar. So, all right, so I'm going to go ahead and put the first tack on this plate here. Just trying to melt a little bit of that plate down onto the tube there. Really awkward position, and just not able to get filler metal in there at this time. All right, and that's looking great. 20 and 5/8 all the way top to bottom. So now I just need to tack the rear, secure this in place, and I'll add some more tacks as well. and then this will be located. All right, so I measured the back out here, and it's looking great, so I'm going to go ahead and put a tack there, and I think I'll put a tack on the outside of the front as well. All right, cool, so that's tacked in. It's looking nice. Go ahead and pull the tape off of this and make sure. Yeah, cool. So just needs to go inward just a little bit. Welding the inside is going to do that. I'm going to have to fixture these plates together to keep them where I need them to weld, but it's looking really good. Got something for the seat to bolt to now. So next, just got to get the other one in here, and then that'll be a set of plates. Cool. All right, cool. So got that plate tacked in, as you just saw, and I've been measuring it, making sure it's spaced from the outer plate properly, and it's looking really good. Looks nice and parallel, measures out about 20 3/8 of an inch, kind of relaxed. You know, I think these pull in just a little bit when I clamp them to the seat, so that's perfect. But once again, nice and parallel, looking good. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead, go over and do the other side, tack that other plate, the inner plate, on the passenger side, and then these will be looking really sweet. So let's check that out next. Oh, also real quick, I just wanted to show you, if you look through, let's see, I got to line the camera up here, but look through both holes, they're all lined up pretty nicely there. So that's what I'm shooting for. Just want everything nice and in line, and that's going to be really sweet. All right, so I've got the passenger seat in here along with the inner mounting plate, and I'm just working on kind of positioning it exactly where it needs to go. I've got some tape on the inside here that you can't see from your vantage point there, but that's helping me keep this thing in place. So I'm going to go ahead and lay the first tack right here, and then I'll measure it some and kind of move it around if I need to, and then I'll stick a couple more tacks on this guy. All right, let's get that first tack on here. Alrighty. Alright, I'm going to move that in just a touch. Alright, so I just heated that tack up and pushed the plate a little bit. Yeah, okay, perfect. That's saying 20 5/16 to match the top. Oh, sweet, it's looking great. All right, I've got everything clamped and set up for a second tack at the back, so I'm gonna go ahead and make it happen. All right, that's looking really sweet. Looks right down that tube, nice and straight, and looks to be pretty vertical and all that. I'm going to measure it out, but just kind of wanted to show how I had to clamp it. I got a little out of straight there when I had to kind of melt that tack, but it's looking really nice now. So just going to lay a couple more tacks on these and go ahead and do that tack I mentioned earlier, and it should be looking awesome. Alright, I want to go ahead and throw another weld on the inside of this bracket just to make sure it stays in place. Looking good, sweet. All right, I've got all 4 brackets in. Let's check them out. All right, cool. Now that I've got all 4 brackets tacked in, I went ahead and mocked both seats up, and they're looking really cool in there. Well, these things are looking great. Really stoked to have them mounted in the Nova, and it's going to be really cool moving forward, knowing that the seating is established. Obviously, there's a few more steps that need to take place. One of those is something I've actually made a template for. I want to gusset those outer plates on either side on the outside of the seats. I want to gusset them so that they can't really lean, just to hold the seat steady side to side. But most importantly, I need to mount the back of the seat. So if we go over there and check that out, so you can see kind of how I still have the wood structure behind the seats here, and there's actually going to be a mount, and I'll probably use an aluminum piece that Kirkey makes, but I could also make my own out of chromoly, and that's just going to go back to the chassis of the car and support the rear of the seat, and that's required by NHRA, and I'm sure all the other sanctioning bodies, just to secure that seat so that it doesn't flop forward and backwards there. As far as that gusset, that's going to go down here at the side of the seat. You can kind of see I've made the shape here, and that's just going to fit just like this. And again, what that's going to do is just prevent that plate from being able to lean. I might even make a short version to mount at the back, just to double reinforce it. But that's one thing that I'm going to need to work on moving forward. And what I want to do is I kind of want to have a second part to this video where I do all that stuff. and also put all the mounts in for the actual harness, so the seat belts or the racing harness in this car. Before I start drilling holes and actually mounting the seats, I want to get the owner of the car back in one more time just to sit in there and make sure everything's perfect. At this point, the seat can move up, down, fore, aft, lean it forward, back, whatever it needs. So before I drill holes in the seats, I just want to make sure it's perfect. And then I'll show y'all the process moving forward with reinforcing the back of the seat, or mounting the back of the seat, and as well as mounting that racing harness. Well, it's super awesome to have the seats mounted in the Nova. Really looking forward to showing you guys how I gusset those outer plates and mount the backs of the seats to the chassis. Also hoping to get those anchor points in the Nova chassis here really soon for the racing harness. That's going to be some really cool stuff, hopefully coming up real soon. I'm going to try to put up videos a little more frequently than I have been. Sorry to take so long, but this has been a lot of head scratching and a lot of work measuring and just getting everything just right so I can fit the seats in properly. Once again, I want to get the owner back in here so he can sit in the seat, make sure it's just right, and then I'll do the final mounting and the mounting the backs of the seats and all that final stuff. So hope you guys are looking forward to that. Also, parts are starting to roll in for the Cutlass project. That's going to be cool. Got a lot of work to do on that, but hope you guys tune in to check all that out. Until then, I really appreciate you guys watching, liking, and especially subscribing. Feel free to leave comments. I love to see you guys comment on the videos. But we'll see you next time. Until then, take care.